Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga. The courage to be happy. True contentment is within your power.
Are you a teacher, educator, or parent? Then perhaps this sounds familiar. Keeping pace with the children you teach or care for is extremely hard work. It's a real struggle to keep up with the current advice on education and childhood development. It seems like every week there's a new must-read handbook. Take a breath. You don't need to keep abreast of every new development in the field. The truth is, children have always been complex, demanding, and challenging. Why tire yourself out seeking new answers to old problems? Viennese psychologist Alfred Adler pioneered groundbreaking theories of education and child development at the turn of the 20th century, and his timeless wisdom on how to teach and raise happy, self-reliant children is just as relevant today as it was then.
Before we begin, we publish new content every week, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about the latest extracts. Our videos can be a bit longer sometimes because we never compromise on the content of the book and video. Therefore, it's important to watch the video till the end. Let's get started.
What is the purpose of educating a child? Is it to teach her how to read and write, how to work out differential equations, name the world's capital cities, or recite pi to the 20th decimal place? According to psychologist Alfred Adler, it's more profound than that.
The key message here is, the purpose of education is to teach self-reliance.
Adlerian psychology proposes two fundamental concepts to do with self-reliance. First, that humans are conditioned to strive for improvement and independence. Think about it. Even as babies, we desire to overcome our helplessness. It's what drives us to crawl, walk, and speak. We are naturally driven to become self-reliant. Second, that this self-reliance means satisfying our individual expectations and only our individual expectations. In fact, Adler proposes two categories of what he calls tasks. Our own, which we are responsible for, and other people's, which they are responsible for. We should only carry out our tasks. So if, for example, my boss doesn't like me, I shouldn't try to change her mind. Whether she likes me or not is her task, not mine. And it's in fulfilling our own tasks without intervening in others that we become self-reliant. Adler believed that we reach true happiness by achieving full self-reliance. But don't make the mistake of thinking that means withdrawing. For Adler, the truly self-reliant individual is harmoniously integrated in society, while simultaneously also meeting her own needs. So, how does education fit into all this? At first glance, Adlerian psychology doesn't really fit in an educational context. After all, isn't the idea of teaching self-reliance a bit counterintuitive? And following Adler's logic, surely learning is a child's task. It's not one for a teacher or a parent to share. Is it? Actually, Adler saw education as essential for self-reliance. Remember how connected it is to community? Adler believed that children learn self-reliance and how to be part of their communities by sharing human knowledge, things like how to interact with people or knowing what a green light at a crosswalk means. In other words, education. In the next blinks, we'll talk more about how Adler's ideas around education can be put into practice to help educators and parents alike raise self-reliant, not to mention happy, children. Imagine a classroom. A teacher stands at the board. He has planned an engaging and informative lesson. He's thoughtfully selected his materials and created interesting, age-appropriate tasks. But his students are out of control. They ignore the lesson and refuse to listen or stay in their seats. In fact, they're running in the corridor and painting on the walls. It's clear there's a key ingredient missing in this lesson: respect. But respect for whom? Most of us would conclude the students need to start respecting their teacher. Adler, however, would say that this teacher needs to start respecting his students.
The key message is, respect is seeing another person for who they are.
Many of us imagine that respecting someone means recognizing their authority. But Adler's take was completely different. He saw respect as a means of growing relationships. In fact, he believed that respect for others was the foundation of strong relationships. And having strong relationships is the key to getting people to listen to you. Remember from the last blink how Adler emphasized that self-reliance is dependent on belonging in society? Well, respect enables the relationships we need for that belonging. There's something else you need to know about the Adlerian concept of respect. Adler didn't view respecting someone as holding them in high regard or admiring their achievements. He believed that to profoundly respect someone, you need only accept them for who they are without judgment. Let's go back to that teacher with the class full of problem students. According to Adler, he doesn't need his students to respect him. He needs to start respecting them, accepting them for who they are, unconditionally and without judgment. And when he does that, the students will respect him back, right? And thanks to that mutual respect, they'll listen to him and engage with his lesson, won't they? Well, maybe. And maybe not. Respecting someone is no guarantee they'll respect you in turn. But if the teacher accepts his students for who they are, he encourages his students, in turn, to accept themselves. And this acceptance is a step on the road to self-reliance. Let's consider a child who is given a magnifying glass for her birthday. Through its lens, she discovers a fascinating insect world. She spends hours watching ants move through the grass, curious to learn more about their industrious behavior. Later, by chance, she discovers the glass can intensify the rays of the sun. Equally curious, she focuses the sunlight on an ant. The ant burns alive. Is she being cruel? No. She is acting out of curiosity and an ignorance of what a life, even an ant's life, is worth.
The key message here is, don't scold problem behavior, but don't praise good behavior either.
So many of children's problem behaviors, whether burning ants, shouting in quiet spaces, or running out into busy roads, come from ignorance. It's therefore unproductive to tell them off. It's far better to address their ignorance and explain to the child with a magnifying glass that life, whether insect or human, is precious. Don't reprimand her for what she doesn't know. That seems like good advice, but only up to a point, surely. A kindergartner might disobey rules out of ignorance, but what about a 10-year-old who knows the rules, but breaks them anyway? According to Adler, even in this case, scolding bad behavior is unproductive, and praising good behavior is just as pointless. In fact, Adler broke problem behavior down into stages, and each one proves how praising or rebuking children actually encourages bad behavior. Stage 1 is a demand for admiration. When good behavior is met with praise, children behave well in order to get more. This leads to stage 2, which Adler called attention drawing. This is when a child behaves well but doesn't get the praise she expects. She then resorts to disruptive behavior to get attention, which leads to a telling off. But to the child, even this negative attention is preferable to none at all. Note how, no matter whether the child is behaving well or poorly, she is acting in a way designed to receive attention. So the answer for parents and educators dealing with problem behaviors is to simply avoid praising or rebuking the children in their care. But praise is good, isn't it? How can you raise a happy, well-adjusted child if you don't praise positive behavior? We'll shed some light on that question in the next blink. From gold stars to glowing report cards, praise is one of the most powerful tools at the contemporary teacher's disposal. Educators often view praise as a form of positive reinforcement. Praise a child for doing something right, the theory goes, and he'll repeat that good behavior. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Praise doesn't work the way we think it does.
The key message is, praise inhibits growth and encourages unhealthy competition.
Praise a child for good work and he will view praise as the reward for that work. While many of us naturally fall into this habit, it's a dynamic that is fundamentally un-Adlerian. Remember Adler's concept of tasks? Well, in this scenario, the child's task is to work. It's not his task to be praised. When an educator praises a child's work, they distract the child from his task. On top of this, they train the child to seek satisfaction in praise and deny him the more profound satisfaction of good work done for its own sake. Praise also negates respect. For Adler, respect is accepting others for who they are, unconditionally, whereas giving praise says only, I respect you when you act in one way, but not in other ways. What happens when you praise a boisterous child for listening quietly at story time? He may be quieter in future, but you teach him that he is more worthy of your attention when he acts out of character. Not only that, but in a classroom setting, praise creates hierarchy. You see, praise can never be doled out equally, else it becomes redundant. So some children receive more praise and some receive less. This sets up a hierarchy, and this hierarchy breeds competition. Soon, praise turns classmates into rivals. But isn't life competitive, I hear you say? Surely, if we shelter our children from competition in school, we'll leave them unprepared for the cut and thrust of grown-up life. Well, Adler perceives a difference between competition and rivalry. Competition is a fact of life. Rivalry is not. Imagine you're running a marathon, surrounded by other runners, but you feel no rivalry towards them. You still compete. In fact, your peers motivate you to run faster and keep going. And when you finish, your sense of accomplishment doesn't hinge on where you place. That's what competition, without rivalry, looks like. Competition is a constant in our society, whereas rivalry is not. And by declining to create hierarchies through praise, educators can remove rivalry from the classroom. Children are complex, intelligent, and contradictory people, just like adults. Like adults, children have nuanced desires and needs, and they think and feel just as intensely as adults. But let's be real. In our society, adults are superior to children. There are lots of things adults can do that children can't. Things like vote, drive, drink legally, or even reach the top shelf at the supermarket.
The key message is, children are inferior to adults, but there's strength in inferiority.
Adler noted that children often suffer an inferiority complex, a feeling of frustration that occurs when someone feels inadequate compared to others. This is upsetting for the child, and so our first impulse when a child brings their frustrations to us is to calm them through approving, comforting words. Unfortunately, the subtext of those words is to tell her, "You are complete, you are superior, you are special and not like others." Here's the thing. It's perfectly natural for children to feel inadequate. Children actually start their lives from what Adler termed a place of incompleteness, meaning that they are still developing. While their minds are sophisticated, their bodies are weak and small compared with adult bodies. Every day they are confronted with a gap between what they want to do and what they're able to do. But if the history of human civilization has taught us anything, it's that inferiority isn't necessarily a drawback. Humans are certainly not the strongest creatures on this planet, yet our weaknesses spur us on. If we could run as fast as horses, we would never have built trains or cars. If we could fly like birds, we would never have built planes. When you think about it, our inferiority has been the driving force behind our greatest achievements. It's also given us something even more meaningful than our technological achievements: togetherness. Since the days of the hunter-gatherers, humans have had to work together to survive. It is our inferiority which bonds us to the rest of humanity. Praising a child who is struggling through an inferiority complex actually divorces her from this community feeling. Praise that says, "You are special," or "You are not like others," isolates her. Worse, it teaches her to depend on others for approval, ironically keeping her in a position of inferiority permanently, rather than enabling her to become self-reliant. Education is a gift. Teachers give their students skills, knowledge, attention, and time. Exceptional teachers can give their students something more. They give joy, and not only joy, but the capacity to create and sustain joy in their own lives long after they've left the classroom.
The key message is, your friendship is the most powerful lesson you can give your students.
See, Adler had an interesting theory. All problems, he said, are interpersonal problems. What do problems have to do with joy? We'll get there in a minute. But first, let's explore the idea that all problems are interpersonal. If you existed alone on this planet, Adler figured, you would exist without competition or envy or even loneliness. After all, when you're truly alone, you can't be lonely. So did Adler believe that we could avoid problems by avoiding people? Quite the opposite, actually. First of all, we can't avoid people. Even from birth, we are connected with others. Secondly, and perhaps more importantly, Adler perceived that interpersonal relationships weren't just the source of all problems, they were the source of all joy. Adler said that joy derives from community feeling, a feeling that gives us a sense that we belong in society, that we are not isolated. We are all born with this innate sense inside us, but we need to activate it. And we activate it through what he called our friendship relations. That doesn't just mean cultivating a few close friendships. It means treating everyone we meet as a friend. And where do children first learn about friendship? At school, of course. And here's where the teacher comes in. She models these friendship relations to her students, not by behaving as if they are her friends, but by treating every student with the warmth and empathy she would extend to a true friend. When the teacher models friendship in this way, her students learn to generate and maintain their own friendship relations with the people in their lives, and in doing so, they open up the possibility for lasting joy. Star signs, Myers-Briggs tests, aura readings, enneagrams. There are countless methodologies that claim to tell us who we are and why we act the way we do. But according to Adler, one thing really can explain our personalities, and that's birth order.
The key message is, birth order influences children's behavior, and adults too.
You might remember that Adler placed a lot of emphasis on interpersonal relationships. For many children, the most intense set of interpersonal relationships they experience are those with their immediate families. Adler believed that children experience these relationships very differently depending on where they fall in the birth order. Here's how it breaks down. Firstborn children receive their parents' undivided love and attention, at least for a time. When a sibling comes along, things get tricky, and for some firstborn children, they're so disturbed by the new arrival that they spend their lives trying to heal and return to the old order. As a result, eldest children can tend towards conservatism and pessimism. Children born second or later in the birth order are just the opposite. Born with a ready-made rival, their impulse is to outstrip their older sibling, which puts the older child in the more powerful position. As a result, their self-worth can be tied to rebelliousness and a rejection of family dynamics. And it's no easier for only children. They exist in a state of constant anxiety about the potential arrival of a new sibling and rival. And if one never arrives, they project that rivalry onto their parents. As a result, they can have a combative relationship with their families. None of the tendencies tied toward birth order are particularly healthy. What's more, they make self-reliance impossible because each of these behaviors is tied to approval and attention from others inside the family unit. How can teachers and parents help children overcome these negative tendencies? Teachers can encourage children on a path to self-reliance, while parents can carefully cultivate equal relationships with each of their children. But the most effective thing a parent or educator can do is to free themselves of their own birth order tendencies. Unchecked, these attention-seeking behaviors can persist into adulthood, getting in the way of modeling self-reliance. When a child is born, he is the center of his own little universe. His power is almost godlike. He only has to cry for others to comfort him, feed him, or rock him. Me, the child learns. I am the most important thing in the world. Of course, he might be powerful, but he is also completely dependent. And if he is to successfully complete the journey from dependence to self-reliance, he will need to let go of the very thing he holds so dearly, that idea of me as the center of the universe. So how does he do this?
The key message is, love supports the transition from dependence to self-reliance.
Adler believed that true self-reliance could only be unlocked through love. He might be forgiven for thinking the great psychologist had lost the plot here. Doesn't love mean losing yourself to someone else? Well, that was exactly his point. See, the self-reliance that Adler had been talking about all along isn't intended to divorce us from others. It's a self-reliance that opens us up. As Adler himself put it, self-reliance is breaking away from self-centeredness. When we are self-reliant, we can meet our own needs. That allows us to exist harmoniously in society without demanding that others cater to our desires or give us a sense of self-worth. And it's only when we have reached this level that we are able to build true partnerships. It's through these partnerships, contends Adler, that lasting happiness is born. Real happiness, not self-interested happiness that is focused on our own feelings, and not other-interested happiness that is concerned with the happiness of our partner. Adler believed that this is the kind of happiness that can only occur when two people leave me behind and create a new connection that belongs to and serves us. So this is the final step on a child's journey from dependence to self-reliance, entering into love, whether romantic or platonic, and finally, relinquishing me for we. The key message in these blinks is that education shouldn't just be concerned with teaching facts and figures. It has a far more important role to play. Education has the potential to teach self-reliance, and teaching a child self-reliance teaches him to be happy, respectful, and at one with his community. Educators and parents who can cultivate self-reliance in their charges are fulfilling education's higher purpose. The nugget of actionable advice for these blinks is, don't dole out praise, cultivate empathy. Adler believed that praise was ultimately harmful for children. So how are we to acknowledge good behavior? Instead of compliments like "you are kind for sharing" that encourage the child to look inward, model empathy. Tell her instead, when you shared your toy with Rishi, you made him feel very happy.
Got feedback? We'd love to hear from you about our content. Just share your thoughts and book recommendations in the comments section, and be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about the latest extracts. Thank you and have a great day.